The consumer battery in our Mercedes SL55 is running down faster than it should, and I suspect that our car has some kind of battery draw. Now, we've already detected in the past 2 battery draws on this car. The first was the tracker when we first got the car, and the second was a faulty glove box switch. Now, this is a brand new AGM battery in here, and if I show you the voltage on that, 11.3, this battery is pretty much fully discharged at 11.8, and anything below 11.8 will cause the consumer battery warning light to come on. And if you continue to drive your car short distances and just charging the battery up a little bit until that warning light comes off, you will eventually ruin a perfectly good battery. What you need to do is get to the source of the battery draw. The best way to chase down or chase a milliamp draw is to get yourself a decent clamp meter. The Fluke 325 is excellent. Not only does it do AC and DC, but more importantly, it goes down to 10.01. My cheap clamp meters will just go to a decimal place of 1. This goes to a decimal place of 2, which is what you need to track down milliamp draws. The next thing you need to do is to 0 the clamp meter, and then just clamp it around a terminal. We just got that clamped around the negative terminal of the battery, and you can see that there's currently 1.1 amps going through the battery. Now, that's obviously because this rear light is on and because we've woken the car up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a camera on a tripod in here with a light on, and I'm going to shut the car down, and you should see that the current draw there falling. Now, it should fall to something like 50 milliamps. If you're at 100 milliamps or 200 milliamps, your battery is going to run down over a period of days. Okay, I'm going to close the boot of the car now. The boot light will go out, and you should see that current drop. Now, just a word of warning or advice, you could do the same process by disconnecting the negative terminal of the battery and putting a standard voltmeter in series between the 2 terminals and setting the voltmeter to amps. But the problems with doing that is, the first problem is, as soon as you disconnect the battery, you're going to lose various memory settings. You're going to disrupt various modules as well. And the other problem is, on the cheap and cheerful voltmeters and amp meters, they have a fuse inside them, and that's often rated as 10 amp fuse. And you can see that when you switch on and off certain modules in this car, you get these voltage and current spikes. And when I've used a cheap and cheerful voltmeter to try and do this, I've ended up blowing the fuse in the voltmeter because of those spikes. So this is a much cleaner and safer way of doing it, and just make sure you get yourself a decent clamp meter that can actually read less than 100 milliamps, i.e. 10 milliamps. I'm going to use this thermal imaging camera here just to go around the car and see if anything is warmer than it should be. This is the front fuse box here, and if we hold the camera over that, you can see there's nothing jumping out as being warm there. There is actually another fuse box on this side of the car, but once again, I don't expect to find anything there. So previously, when we had a broken glove box switch and we would point this thermal imaging camera at that glove box when it was closed, that would be shining bright orange. We're just seeing what... Okay, now this here, central glove box, is glowing bright orange, which means I think that it's warmer than it should be. Now, there are 2 things inside here which could be causing a battery drain. The first is the light that comes on when you open this, and the second is a mobile phone charging cradle, when this car originally came with an old Nokia style phone. So let's see if we can determine which it is. Wow. That there shows you pretty conclusively that Nokia phone charging cradle is warm. In fact, if I touch that with my hand, that is warm to touch. So that, for some reason, is causing a battery drain, so we're going to have to disconnect that. You can see from the schematic here that fuse 76 is for the telephone, I believe. As I've mentioned before, the rear fuses live under here, and to lift this up you just pull these two tabs back gently and then lift the whole thing up. That will give you access to the fuses beneath. You can see that the glowing orange here is actually the lower SAM unit, and that will be warm because the car has woken up, or it could be warm because there's actually current going through that. What you're not seeing, or at least what I'm not seeing, is any of the fuses here warm. So I was hoping that you might just be able to take out a fuse for the phone, but I don't think that's going to be a possibility. Fuse 76 is this brown 7.5 amp fuse here. If there had been current going through that fuse, that would have shown up bright orange on our thermal camera. But if you don't happen to have a thermal imaging carrier and you want to test whether there's a current going through a fuse, you can use one of these little testers here. And what you do is you take the fuse out, plug it in here, and then plug this in where the fuse was, turn it on, and if there's any current going through there, it'll show up on this little screen here. But we've done that on this fuse and there's no current going through that fuse as expected. If you do have this problem on your Nokia phone charger, rather than going to the rigmarole, which I've seen some people do, taking the entire central console out and trying to remove this, you can just press this tiny little button here, press it down and slide back, and you'll be able to lift this whole unit out. Now the question is whether or not that short circuit is coming from the module underneath, or whether it's actually coming from here. What I'm going to see is if removing the actual phone cradle will get rid of that drawer, or whether we actually need to remove the phone module itself, which is a little bit more involved. We've got a 900 milliamp drawer there. I'm going to close the boot of the car and then lock the car and see what that drops to. So we've come back a few hours after taking out that cradle, and lo and behold, there does not seem to be any heat source there anymore. I'm going to call that job done. Just simply by taking this here out, we seem to have cured that battery drain, and I don't have to go to the whole rigmarole of taking out those rear boxes to remove the actual module. The last part of this job is to charge this battery up full, and do not leave it in the car partially discharged and hope that by doing short distances you'll charge it up. That is almost a guaranteed way to ruin a perfectly good battery. The thing about the Noco Genius is it will charge a standard 12-volt battery. It'll also charge an AGM battery, which is what is in the R230s or SL500 or SL55, and if you're lucky enough to have come with a lithium battery, it'll charge that too. It's the next day. We've fully charged the consumer battery. We're just going to use the thermal imaging camera just to check that there is no heat coming from the mobile phone connector in that central console. You can see there is no bright orange heat source here anymore. And finally, if we attach the clamp meter to the car for 20 minutes, that drops all the way down to just 50 milliamps, which is absolutely perfect for this car. So I'm going to call that job done.